Hi everyone, welcome to today's live Facebook broadcast. I'm Perry Osnes, Vice President of Legislative Affairs with Compeer Financial, and today I want to spend a few minutes taking a closer look at the new Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, or CFAP as acronyms go, that USDA announced enrollment for last week for farmers and ranchers that have been impacted by the COVID situation. We know a lot of our farmers are facing uncertainty and volatility at the moment, so hopefully this program will be a tool to help farmers navigate through some of this price volatility. I want to spend a few minutes today talking about the big details of the program, a lot of finer details that I'll provide some areas of assistance or direct you to some assistance for that. So we'll save some time for questions at the end, and with that, let's get started here. So, as mentioned, yesterday on Tuesday, May 26th, USDA announced open enrollment for the CFAP program. This is a $16 billion program that provides direct payments to farmers and ranchers that have been impacted by market losses due to the COVID-19 situation. Funding for the CFAP program comes from two funding sources. $9.5 billion of that was appropriated by Congress to USDA through the CARES Act. And then $6.5 billion was provided with existing dollars that USDA had at their disposal through the Commodity Credit Corporation funds. So that becomes important as I'll get into this a little bit, because the way the payment rates are calculated, there's going to be different payment rates based on each of these sources of funding. So some details again. The program sign-up started yesterday, May 26th. It runs through August 28th. Sign-up will be done through your local Farm Service Agency office. Most farmers are already familiar and have a working relationship with those offices. That's where they'll be submitting their application for this program. Now, in terms of commodities and crops that are eligible for this program, major crops such as corn, soybeans, wheat, oats are some of the major crops. Livestock, cattle, hogs, sheep, and dairy are eligible. And specialty crops, from fruits to vegetables to nuts. There's a number of specialty crops that are eligible for this assistance, and a complete list of that can be found. And I'm going to use a prop here today. If you don't remember anything else about what I talk about in the next few minutes, this is a great resource for the CFAP program. It's farmers.gov/CFAP. And I'll talk through that. There's eligibility forms, program information, and things like that. But again, for specialty crops, if you're wondering if you're a specialty crop grower, if you're wondering if your specialty crop is covered, go to that website. You'll find a list of the eligible crops. Now, there are some eligibility criteria for participation. Key one being adjusted gross income limits, AGI. A person or a legal entity must have an AGI of less than $900,000 for a 3-year tax period, that being 2016, 2017, 2018, to be eligible for this program. However, if the AGI limit will be waived if 75% of that person or entity's gross income comes from farming and ranching. But that will be something for farmers to check out as they sign up for the program. Again, to sign up for the program, it will be done through your local Farm Service Agency office. It's important to note right now that, like a lot of offices, the USDA service centers are currently closed for customers. And so the way to reach out to them will be through phone appointments, contacting the local FSA office, and you can submit your applications to the FSA office through email, fax, scanning, and things like that. So again, I think a good first step in this process, even before you contact the local FSA office to set up an appointment, would be to, again, go to this website, farmers.gov/CFAP. Reason being is you can download the application form right there. The application form is, I believe it's AD-3114. You'll find the application form on the site. There's also a payment calculator if you're trying to determine if you've got multiple commodities, and you can try to determine what your payment will be. There's a helpful calculator tool there as well. So I would suggest go on that website, download the forms, start filling that out, and get ready then to submit your application to the FSA office. Now, if you're an existing producer that already, again, has a working relationship with your local FSA office, that application form might be the only form you need to submit to apply for the program. If you're a producer that hasn't been utilizing FSA programs recently, if you're a livestock producer or a specialty crop grower, there are several other forms that you may need to fill out, particularly if you haven't worked with that office for a while. There's a business structure form. It's a 902 form. Again, you can find this on the farmers.gov website. There's the AGI eligibility form that I talked about earlier. There's a conservation compliance form. There's a direct deposit form that you'll need to fill out, your contact information, things like that. Again, all those eligibility forms that you'll need to submit can be found at that website, farmers.gov/CFAP. Now, I think where things start getting even more confusing perhaps right now is the payment rates. And there are specific payment rates for individual crops and livestock based on the two sources of funds for the Cfa program. Again, funding came from the CARES Act and from the CCC funds, and USDA has chosen then to kind of divide up payments based on that source of funds. So in essence, there'll be two payment rates from those sources of funds that will eventually be combined into one payment for producers. In the interest of time today, I won't go through all the various payment rates, but again, they can be found at farmers.gov/CFAP. I'll walk through a little bit of the details for some of the various sectors. Let's talk about crops first of all. Crop commodity payments for the Cfa program will be based on the smaller of or lesser of 50% of total 2019 crop production or the unpriced grain inventory as of January 15, 2020. Again, the smaller of 50% of the total 2019 production or unpriced grain inventory as of January 15, 2020. Then the CARES Act rate and the CCC payment rates will be applied by commodity to 50% of those eligible bushels and then combined into one payment. Again, it's a bit confusing. It's probably going to be easier for you to read this online, but the CARES Act and CCC payment rates will be by commodity will be then applied to 50% of those eligible bushels and then combined into one payment. Use corn as an example. The payment rate for corn is 67 cents per bushel. 32 cents per bushel comes from CARE Act funding, and 35 cents per bushel comes from CCC funds. Kind of similar with soybeans, the CARES Act payment rate is 45 cents per bushel. The CCC payment rate is 50 cents per bushel. One of the questions that has come up thus far, because as I mentioned earlier, that formula of the smaller of 50% of total 2019 production or unpriced grain inventory as of January 15th. There's been questions raised, well, what does unpriced inventory mean? It's a great question. I've been advised by FSA that a key question for producers to consider on that is, was any grain that they had in inventory after January 15th subject to some form of price risk? If so, that grain should be eligible for assistance under this program. Now, a key part of this is, in terms of when farmers enroll, they will be self-certifying their production for this program, meaning they don't need to provide evidence up front, bringing in receipts or scale tickets or bin measurements, things like that. It's a little bit like the original MFP program for those of you that applied for that. They don't have to provide evidence of production up front. However, FSA county committees will be reviewing the applications, and also FSA will be doing spot checks. So you're going to want to get this right, particularly in terms of grain that was held in inventory that may have not have been priced. You want to get that right. Again, I think the key question to consider on that is, was any grain in inventory after January 15th subject to some form of price risk? Then it's likely going to be eligible for assistance. Once that gets calculated, the payment that farmers will get will be 80% of the total amount that they're eligible for. USDA is holding back 20% of that payment, given the fact that they've got a finite amount of money for this program, $16 billion. They kind of want to wait and see how much utilization of this program will take up, and if they need to find additional sources of funding for this. So farmers will eventually get 100% of their eligible payment, but the first payment will be 80% of what they're eligible for. Now, let's transition a little bit to CFAP assistance for livestock, and by that I mean pigs, sheep, and beef. Here, a single payment for livestock will be calculated using the sum of the producer's number of livestock sold between January 15th and April 15th of 2020. That will come from CARES Act funding. And that will be multiplied by the payment rates per head, that again is listed on the CFAP website, and the highest inventory number of livestock between April 16th and May 14th, 2020, multiplied by the payment rate per head. Again, I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you. It's hard to do this without showing you this, but again, I encourage you to go to farmers.gov/CFAP. But there'll be a single payment, but based on two different factors. One is the number of livestock sold between January 15th and April 15th, multiplied by the payment rate per head, and the highest inventory, highest number of inventory between April 16th and May 20th, multiplied by a payment rate per head. So, for example, with hogs, there's actually two payment rates. Pigs less than 120 pounds will receive $28 per head through CARES Act funding. Pigs greater than 120 pounds will receive $18 per head through CARES Act funding. And pigs of all sizes will receive an additional $17 a head from CCC funds. And the same sort of kind of factors, if you will, apply for beef as well. There's several different levels based on the size of the animal, and there'll be a formula rate applied to that. For dairy, I'll shift to dairy here. All dairy operations that had milk production in the first quarter of 2020, that being January, February, or March, are eligible for assistance. If a producer had to dump milk during that time, that dumped milk is eligible for assistance as well. Dairy payments will be made on milk production for the first quarter of calendar year 2020 multiplied by $4.71 per hundredweight. There'll be a second part of the payment will be based on a national adjustment to each producer's production for the first quarter multiplied by $1.47 per hundredweight. So in the end, approximately a dairy producer will get approximately $6.18 per hundredweight total payment. Payment limits. Let's talk about payment limits a little bit. CFAP payments are subject to a per person or legal entity payment limitation of $250,000. Now, this is an improvement, if you will. Back when USDA announced this program several weeks ago, at that time I think they were talking about a $125,000 payment limitation. Obviously, some of the losses have been experienced primarily in livestock and dairy have far exceeded that. To USDA's credit, they went back and modified that. I know a lot of livestock organizations that Farm Credit belongs to, like the Farm Credit Council, Compeer, and others, advocated that be increased just in light of the dire circumstances facing livestock producers. Well, it probably won't make many of those whole at the moment, but at least that was a step up to raise those payment limits to $250,000. One other part of the payment limitation is this. Unlike other Farm Service Agency programs, there's a special payment limitation rule that's applied to participants that are part of corporate entities, such as LLCs, LLPs, and that sort of thing. In those cases, those entities may receive up to $750,000 based on the number of shareholders within the entity, not to exceed 3. The other part of that is, to be eligible, shareholders have to contribute at least 400 hours of active management and or labor in the operation. And again, that information will have to be documented and filled out along with the application that is submitted to USDA. I think the USDA form is CCC 942. So that'll be something to pay attention to as well if you're bumping up against those payment limits. A couple of other additional items that I'll mention, and then I'll see if there's any questions. But another question that has come up, we've had many producers that have taken advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that were both provided through the Small Business Administration as part of the CARES package. Question has been raised, well, if I receive assistance through those SBA programs, am I still eligible for CFAP assistance? The answer is yes. They're not tied together. You're fully eligible for all the benefits of the CFAP assistance program. Kind of in closing, I just want to remind everyone again, producers will be asked to fill out the application form. They'll be asked to self-certify their production and the inventory numbers for the purposes of this program. And again, this is done to make sure that these dollars could get out the door as quick as possible. But FSA county committees will be reviewing those applications, and FSA will be doing spot checks. So again, you want to get that information that you submit right, and if you have questions once you filled out the form or once you get into the application process, that would be a great question to ask or verify with your local FSA office. So I've shared a lot here. There's a lot more details on payment rates, and again, in the interest of time, I won't go through all that today. I guess kind of to sum things up, if there's just two things, if you forget everything else I said the last 15 minutes or so, two things I want you to remember. First is this program will again be administered through the Farm Service Agency. And secondly, before you contact the office, I would strongly again encourage you to check out this website, farmers.gov/CFAP. You can go online there again, get the application form, get any eligibility forms you might need. There's a payment calculator. There's additional information there on payment rates by commodity that in the interest of time today I just didn't have a chance to get into, but it's a great resource for you, and I would strongly encourage you, if you haven't already, check that out before you begin the application process. Inventory standpoint, this applies to 2019 production only. Doesn't apply ahead to 2020 because of course we're just in the growing season. I've seen nothing that would indicate that 2018 inventory would be eligible. Might want to verify that with your local Farm Service Agency office, but my understanding that this is just for 2019 grain inventory or grain production only. Again, as I kind of walk through this for a few minutes here, there's a lot of details. I think if you've looked at it, it appears rather complicated, particularly when USDA is using two different sources of funds for the different payment rates. But I think that payment, that application form, that calculator on that website will be really helpful tool. And again, if you have questions, I would encourage you to reach out to your local Farm Service Agency office. Again, they're not open right now. You'll have to call to set up an appointment. But I think that website that I mentioned again, farmers.gov/CFAP, is a great resource, a great starting point for you to begin to fill out the application form, get some questions answered, and get you on your way to getting eligible and getting signed up for that program. And again, the first part of the payment for the program, the first part of the program will be 80% of what you're eligible for. So with that, thanks for your attention this afternoon. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe, and look for more of these Facebook Live broadcasts from Compeer coming in the next coming weeks. Take care.